Damn. Well, thank you, Jay. Yeah, sorry, guys. That's unfortunate. In a nutshell, what you just missed wasn't that much, I guess. Just talking about the fact that I wasn't planning things to go, yeah, I know, man. I wasn't paying attention to the levels. That's my bad. I feel like we should start this whole thing all over again because people that watch it later are not going to figure this out. Never mind. We're good. As I was mentioning earlier, I talked to Jay briefly. Jay, of course, is at work right now, so that's why he's not on with me for this. We may do another one later. We'll see. But, yeah, I was on getting ready to upload a video, decided to go make some lunch, came back, and when I was getting ready to upload the video was when I turned around and saw the news showing up on my feed. And the first one was basically, and I don't even remember whose page this was, not somebody I normally watch, but it basically came up saying, reminiscing about the career of Hulk Hogan, rest in peace, or something like that. And I thought it was taking a shot at Hogan, like your career's dead or something. And then right next to it was Fox News breaking the story. So it's one of those days that you know is going to come, but you're never going to be ready for it. And that's kind of the way this one hit. I had seen something a couple days ago posted by Bubba the Love Sponge, who's nothing but a piece of shit. And I'm sure right now he's acting like his best friend in the world passed away. Suck a dick. But he basically said that things weren't looking good for Hogan and that type of stuff. And then Jacques Rougeau, who's been a lifelong fan and friend, or rather, of Hulk Hogan, said, I talked to Nick and Hulk's doing better. So, given those two options, I'm going to go with the Jacques Rougeau Nick story over Jimmy Hart and Bubba the Love Sponge. Yeah, I mean, Juan, I get it. I really do. And I think before the microphone got turned up, I was talking about what life in New York was like for a kid in 1985 in March. And New York was WrestleMania. WrestleMania was New York. Everyone knew about Hulk Hogan and Mr. T, and now we've got hail going on outside. I mentioned this earlier, too, but it may not have been with the mic on. We're having some really shitty weather here, so if I get bumped, it wasn't nothing to do with me. It was just the weather. People that didn't follow wrestling knew all about Hulk Hogan. They knew all about WrestleMania. And even if they didn't go to watch it at the Garden or on the closed circuit options, when we would leave to head home and stop at a Burger King to get something to eat, everyone's like, who won the matches? Who won this match? It wasn't even just Hogan's match. The non-watchers knew about, like, Wyndham and Rotundo and the Sheik and Volkov. They knew about Valentine and the Intercontinental title. That's really how big a deal this guy was. And then he transitioned throughout generations. I mean, he ran the red and gold for a long time, probably a little too long. Brought it into the WCW. Kind of got maybe a little tired at some point. You guys can hear me now, right? Should be able to hear me now. Somebody say, yeah, I can hear you. Because if it ain't working out, I don't know what the fuck. Okay, so nobody's saying anything in the chat about my audio. I don't know what the hell it could be. I'm looking at it right here. It's working fine. This is on. This is on. Check 1, 2. Oh, okay. Thank you. So anyway, I kind of believed Jacques Rougeau and Nick over Bubba and thought, he was going to pull through. And it's really, I mean, it's not shocking in some ways because how many years did this guy do the steroids? And we all know that those things are going to shave years off your life. The average life expectation for men is 78. He was 71. Add the steroids. You're always going to end up with some sort of cardiac event, it seems, when you've been doing that, especially for the period of time that these wrestlers tend to do, which is a pretty long time, depending on how long a career you had. And again, he had a massive career, an absolute massive career. Just saw a TMZ interview with Ric Flair, who, of course, was in tears, and talking about his time with Hogan and that they really had a good friendship for many, many years, not just the ones that people would think of. Quick shout out there. Juan's here. Judd's here. Andrew Roberts, of course, was here. William Perkins joining us as well. Thank you, guys. Primetime's in the house. Blaze Radio is in the house. Yeah, I have no idea how that volume got dropped down on the microphone, too. That's weird. I never... Because that was directly on my OBS, and I never touched that. That's strange. J-Rocks, of course, is here. Even though he's not here with me on screen, he's still here. Monstar, how you doing, buddy? Kevin Davis in the house. Think I've covered everybody. Anyone else sneaking in on me? No, I think that's it. So, you think back, I remember a few years back that, and it was a weird thing because I hadn't thought of this individual in a long time, but I started thinking of one of my other childhood heroes before I even, got into wrestling. So it was prior to Hulkamania. This would have been in the 70s. And I'll bet many of you had this hero too, which was Evel Knievel. And I just, out of the blue, started thinking about him, and I got like this, oh, no moment. Because usually when that happens, out of the blue like that, I wasn't watching something where he was on it. It just, I was in the car, and for some reason, Evel Knievel popped in my head. And that's normally one of those moments where, this isn't good. And sure as hell, like 24 hours later. Now, with Hogan, it's a little bit different because I do this channel, and we're constantly, featuring Hulk Hogan and matches and stuff like that. So for him to pop into my head, not unusual at all, but I don't know, there was just something different, I guess because of the two conflicting reports on his health and being so far apart on them. But again, I just gave no weight whatsoever to anything Bubba said, and I still would never. But man, seeing the news story was just, wow. I got to see him in person just over a year and a half ago, I guess now, when he came to where I work. We have this big car auction every year, and some real high-end vehicles, like cars that sell for $4 million. And he was there using a big walking stiff, kind of like Gandalf. So he wasn't looking great moving. Now, that may have been after a recent surgery, and they were golf carting him around quite a bit. But there's no denying that it was Hogan. And here's one of these moments, though, where I felt I'm finally going to take some time off at work here after next week because we're going to slow down drastically. And one of the things on my list is two things, really. One of them was to go to the Hulk Hogan store here in Orlando. I've never been to it yet. I said, I'm going to go up to the Hulk store and get something. And then I was going to go out to Clearwater to his bar for karaoke night and hang out there. So, yeah, that's all. Still going to go to the store, hopefully. And then I'm wondering to myself, what happens? Does that store stay in business? Or, I don't know if that's something that's going to fall to the heirs. And now, just because I'm talking about things like this, last I heard, him and Brooke were not speaking in quite a while. Be sad if that's the way that ended. Dude, I still have the Evel Knievel toys. They're in the garage in a box. I even have the van the travel van, and it's mostly intact. It's missing one piece. I think one of the sliding walls is gone, but other than that, it's in one piece. And I've got probably 5 different. I got a chopper, the regular bike, the black bike. I got a bunch of them, and I probably got 3 different Evel Knievels because, those things don't last so long. They had that little wiry thing going on inside of them. Yeah, Ozzy is another one, though, that we kind of knew that was coming. I would suggest that I was more amazed that Ozzy lasted as long as he did, whereas I thought Hogan would still be around for another 3 to 5 years, maybe. But yeah, this kind of is reminiscent of Farrah Fawcett passing away, and then 24 hours later, Michael Jackson, which completely dwarfed Farrah Fawcett's passing. It's like it wasn't even news the next day. Nobody even mentioned her again, which I thought was incredibly insensitive. I'm not saying she was the same level superstar as Michael Jackson, but, to just literally, okay, we got a new guy. We don't need you anymore. Just kind of cold. But that's the news. Monstar. Dude, I think Flair, during this TMZ interview while he's crying, I think he's like, I got to be next. It almost seemed like he's crying because he knows, like, it's probably tomorrow for me. Flair already died once. I mean, he was dead. And through what can only be an act of God, he comes back, and then he's starting to do the shit again with the drinking, and it's like, dude. And he outlives the guy who at 71 years old was still in pretty good-looking shape, despite all the back surgeries and everything. And it had to be hard for him to do any kind of training at this point in time, but he still did it. You go, Juan. Hulk it up, baby. Jake Roberts. Again, when you think about it. Now, Roberts isn't as old as Hogan, I think. He's probably in his mid to late 60s. I don't think he's 71. He could be. I don't think he is, though. I just literally completed as far as I'm planning to, my Hogan collection about 2 weeks ago. This one came in. We'll see. Yeah. This is him in his old Freddie Blassie managered attire. It's got the cape and the whole 9 yards, and it goes on that shelf just behind me. I've got in the centerpiece the 2-pack with him and Mean Gene when they were a tag team in Minnesota for a night. I think it was Minnesota. And he's wearing the Mean Gene Omania shirt. Hogan is, and then the other one is the one with him holding the guitar, the American guitar that was out a couple of years ago, and then this one here on the other side. So that kind of completes that little wall. And then I've shown you guys my Hall of Fame out in the living room with all the figures that are out there. I've added several more Hogans to that list out there. I realized one day, damn, I have no NWO Hogan in this collection. So I got one of those. Yeah, I'm sure Jake is younger. But again, he lived a hard life. He's 70. Well, he's still younger, even if it's only 1 year. But think about the life Jake led. And again, you talk about Ric Flair, he was dead. Look at Jake Roberts in that. What was the damn movie? The documentary. Beyond the Ropes, Beyond the Ring, whatever it was. Beyond the Mat. And, man, what was Jake? Almost 300 plus pounds? I mean, he was enormous. And he was so strung out, man. He was a mess. It's hard for me to believe that some of these people, but then all the time you hear it when musicians pass away. And they'll say it all the time. Can you believe Keith Richards outlived him? And correct me if I'm wrong, Keith Richards is still alive, is he not? Beyond the Mat, yeah. Okay. And if you've not seen it, that's an amazing documentary. So, thank you, Anami. I can't say it. Anani? Is that it? Anani one? Trying to pronounce it, man. Yeah, DDP has saved a lot of guys. God bless that guy. I mean, he bought Scott Hall a lot of years that he probably wouldn't have had, and better years, and gave him a chance to fix relationships and things like that. Same with Jake Roberts. If anyone needed the extra time to fix some things in his life, Jake Roberts has had that opportunity, and from everything we've seen, he's taking advantage of. And that's why I hope, and I'm sure over time we'll find out more. I know Hogan was still obviously talking to Nick on a regular because Nick would go to the bar and stuff like that. But the last I heard is that he and Brooke hadn't talked in quite a while, like over 2 years. I agree with you, Lil Mayo. I mean, with the exception of Chris Benoit, obviously, the things, and this was one of the things Flair was saying on the TMZ interview. He said, who are we to judge? Who amongst us hasn't done that? If our worst moment was caught on film and shown before the world? And there's a lot of stuff Hogan has said and done that I've been like, oof. But at the same time, there's another side. He's not. I've seen him in action, when it comes to just being around people in a crowd and seeing how he treats people. He doesn't have to. It wasn't like he was paid to be at this particular event that I was at. He was just there like everyone else, and he could have said, fuck off, leave me alone, didn't. Granted, he had some handlers around him keeping people at a distance, but you could see that he needed room to maneuver. He wasn't, as nimble as he once was. I appreciate that, Lil Mayo. Yep, and that's the new trailer that I do before programs now talks about keeping tradition alive. That's what the channel's always been about. And if you've been keeping up with the recent stuff that we're doing with the XWF, then you know that Hogan's a big part of that. He's going to stay a big part of it. It's going to be weirder for me now, knowing that he's not. Monstar, I'm just seeing your comment that Brooke apparently had a good last conversation or call with Hogan, and apparently she was at peace with how things were. Not sure how true, and still at. Yeah, I don't know. I would like to think for both of them. For both of them, I mean, she'll hate herself. She will if she didn't have a chance, and she's already going to regret the last several years of just saying, screw you, I'm out. Tom Hood's in the house. Welcome aboard. Oh, man. I don't know that I could say my childhood died with Hogan's passing. A big part of it. It's like one of my buddies in New York who I don't talk to that often. I don't know why. I need to talk to him more. And I've been meaning to call him every week. And as soon as this is done, I'm probably going to pick up the phone and call him because we were all Hulkamaniacs back then. But this was my buddy who had the car, and I ended up getting 2 tickets to the Nassau Coliseum, and it was going to be a match with Hogan and Orndorff. That was right after WrestleMania. Going up against, it was supposed to be Big John Studd and Ken Patera, but Ken Patera ended up getting himself arrested after beating up some cops. So it ended up being Bob Orton filling in with Big John Studd. And we got up to the Coliseum, ended up trading our tickets in for some floor seats. Got to shake hands with Lou Albano and got to pat Hulk Hogan on the back as he was making his entrance into the ring. And believe me, that was it. The guy that you idolized, the guy that you watched that was bigger than life was 2 feet in front of you. And I will never forget that. Never, ever forget that. Mayo, I will never understand how they dropped that ball. Not in a million years. The whole purpose in bringing Flair there and having the title was to have this match. And, man, I was stunned when they decided it wasn't going to happen. I was like, are you kidding me? But then I was there, third row in Orlando, when it finally happened in WCW. Yeah, miracle. I think that's one of the sayings right there. And you can say that for so many people, that they would never have been wrestling fans if not for Hogan. I often wonder, because when I got into wrestling, Hogan existed, but he wasn't wrestling in the WWF at the time. And, my first memory of a match was Fuji Saito winning the tag team titles from Gurria and Martel. So I saw a lot of Ivan Putski and Morocco and Morales, Santana. Bob Backlund was the champion for a good stretch there, and that was our guy. And I still remember when Backlund lost the title and then came out on Saturday morning TV, and he was supposed to go one-on-one with, I believe it was Samula of the Samoans. But, of course, Alpha Zika got involved and were poking away and distracting Backlund. He said, all right, hang out a minute. Ran in the back, and he came out with a partner to cover his back, and it was Hulk Hogan. And 10 a.m. on a Saturday morning with my box of Entenmann's and my milk, and I'm screaming like a lunatic because I'd seen Hogan in Rocky 3. So I already knew it. That was my knowledge of Hogan. I knew he was a wrestler, and I knew he'd been, again, in New York in the 80s, especially early 80s. You didn't have cable TV, so you didn't have access to what's happening in other parts of the country when it came to wrestling. So I didn't see AWA. They weren't on ESPN at the time. Hell, ESPN didn't exist at the time. Or if it did, it was in its infancy. But, yeah, that's my earliest memory of Hogan, was him coming out with Backlund. I guess the earliest was really the Rocky movie, but so far as seeing him in wrestling, I guess my first real wrestling moment, now that I think about it, was going back even earlier to the $6 Million Man when Andre the Giant played Bigfoot. And I just remember that was a big deal even back then, that they were talking about the fact that this big Andre the Giant wrestler is going to play this character. And I'm like, well, who's this guy? And friends of mine that were into wrestling had the magazines. And at that time, Andre wasn't in the WWF. He was touring other parts. So they'd show me the match or the pictures of him without the costume on so I could get a look at him and say, oh, okay, I got you. And then, of course, he showed up and... Yeah, Tom, that's kind of what the meaning is behind it. You know, when they say Hulkamania will live forever, that's what it is. It's the memories. It's the matches. I mean, he did things in the ring that have, again, March 31st, 1985. It's a date that is forever in my mind. That was an amazing day. Not just for wrestling, but just, it's like me and my two best friends went to see this at the closed circuit over at the local college. And I can tell you everything about that day. I can tell you about the promo ads that ran on the radio leading up to it. I can tell you about the MTV 2-hour recap the night before with all the events that led up to it. Monstar, the last thing I heard was on the Beefcake Beyond the Ring, or not Beyond the Ring, Dark Side of the Ring. Sounded like they still weren't talking, which I didn't even know they had a beef. I mean, they were lifelong friends. His 93 return, I think the way he won the belt from Yoko kind of stunk. Even me and a different friend of mine now at this point in time in Florida, we're watching it on the pay-per-view. And we both kind of like, when he came out, and we're like, oh, wait a minute. And then Fuji made that ridiculous challenge that would never happen. We looked at each other, oh, my God, he's going to win the belt. And at first we were kind of thinking it was cool. Then he did it, and we're like, no, that's kind of bullshit. And that was a really bad run for him with the belt as well. And then, of course, the way he lost it was so stupid. I wonder if creative control is going to also live forever. But the 93 return, you're right, it wasn't memorable for any good reasons. The first time I saw him here in Orlando, now the Nassau Coliseum was a much bigger facility than what we have here in Orlando at the time. There was no Magic yet. There was no NBA, so there was no arena. We have the Orange County Convention Center. And I'm going to guess that place probably sat 8,000 maybe, max, if that. Full house. I don't even remember who Hogan was fighting that night. All I know is when he came out, the decibel levels were so loud that I had to cover my ears because I thought my eardrums were going to explode. It was painful. It was literally, I was in pain. That's how loud that crowd got when he came through. Yeah, Thunder Lips was definitely a good little moment for him because he really didn't play a character so much as himself in that one. Now, you could say the same thing. You could say the same thing about... what was the one where he was Rip with Zeus? I mean, that was pretty much him being himself, too. No holds barred. There we go. No holds barred. I knew it would come back to me eventually. Yeah, Tom, in the 80s, Hogan made wrestling so much fun and entertaining. Here's the thing about that. I moved to Florida in 86. And at that time, my cousin, she was maybe a year and a half old, if that. And I would get the task of babysitting occasionally when my aunt and uncle had to go do things. So I try to keep a 1.5-year-old entertained as best I can. And sometimes it was successful and sometimes it wasn't, until the day came along that I had one of my WWF's greatest matches by Coliseum video cassette and popped it into the VCR. And that kid, at the age of maybe 2 or 3 years old, plopped down in front of that TV and didn't budge. And she could barely speak, but she could say, Hulk Hogan. And who's this guy over here? Sheiky. Hulk Hogan and Sheiky. Then I made the mistake of breaking out my LJNs. And I showed her to her. I said, who's this? Hulk Hogan. And she grabbed it from me. And who's this? Sheiky. And she grabbed. And now she's playing with the LJNs, watching this stuff on TV. She ended up biting the nose off of Hulk Hogan. So I had to buy a separate one later on. So I had one with a nose. But even a little kid was just entertained by the character of Hulk Hogan. Yeah, Little Mayo, a lot of people are going to say similar, that, you know, if it weren't for my dad, it wasn't my grandfather. Heck, sometimes it's moms and grandmas, that they were the wrestling fans and they had it on every Saturday, and that's what got me into it. I keep thinking, and further back, my first introduction to wrestling, even though I had no idea who they were or anything, I wasn't even watching it. I was in the other room. But my Italian great-grandfather from Italy, so English was not his strong suit, and I'm in the kitchen with my grandmother and great-grandmother, and I'm all of 5, 6, 7 years old maybe, and I hear my great-grandfather, I think Bruno was wrestling somebody, and they're pulling out the foreign object. And all I hear is my grandfather, the son of a bitch, the dirty bastard, the cheated bastard. And that was my introduction to wrestling right there, really. That's where it started. Yeah, again, you go back to where I just, when he was doing this, rocking this outfit here, he was the bad guy with Freddie Blassie, and he was talking smack, and him and Tony Atlas, of course, had the bodies, so there was that natural rivalry there. I think a lot of people are hurting right now. Forming of the Mega Powers, Kevin. Yeah, that was a big one. That was a big one. And by then, I was already starting to, smarten up to wrestling and how it worked. And I remember them with the big handshake for the first time, thinking, yeah, this ain't going to end well. And I was right, but predictably. Yeah, Hogan and The Rock, man, that is just gold. The way that turned out, I mean, that was right up there with the Bret Hart, Steve Austin double turn. It was just so real the way that took off on its own, and the fans really just made that happen. The Hogan turn on WCW was great. It could have been better. It was a little predictable, the way everything was going down, and the fact that their third partner never showed up, and then he comes down, and even Shivani, I think it was Shivani or maybe it was Bobby, that whose side is he on? Whose side is he on? There was no reason up until that point to ever suspect that he wasn't on the side of WCW. So he kind of blew it to me by doing that. But I think what would have been better is for Hogan to have been on the team of WCW and then turn on them during the match. Oh, damn. Yeah, in many ways, Hogan was a Michael Jordan. I mean, listen, if you're talking about in-ring performer, Shawn Michaels probably steals that when it comes to athleticism and, ability to do. But when it's talking about selling tickets, selling shirts, selling, pay-per-views, and for a year, I mean, you can talk about Austin sales and all that stuff, and I'm not taking anything away. Hogan's done it a lot longer, period. And he did it in a different time, in a different era where you didn't have the network. You didn't have Peacock. You had network TV and you had pay-per-views. And if pay-per-views didn't make money, you cost the company money. Now, Austin got in on some of that pay-per-view stuff as well. I'm not saying he didn't, but wasn't quite, and definitely not for the length of time that Hogan did. I mean, look at No Holds Barred, the match, the movie thing where they actually had the real match in the cage. You knew that was going to suck. And yet, they made money. It wasn't even a live pay-per-view. It was taped. Yeah, Jay and I watched No Holds Barred. I think we watched that one as part of our reviews. The Saturday morning cartoons. Damn, I wore the wrong shirt today. I got my Hulk Hogan with the American flag shirt. I've got the other one that has the Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling with the whole lineup of the characters on it. That would have been a good one. Maybe they'll re-release it on DVD or something now. Hogan always got a big reaction. It didn't matter if it was Philly, Boston, New York. It just didn't matter. Thanks for chipping in there, Steve. Appreciate you. I always loved my MSG shows, man. That's throughout the 80s into the 90s. I freaking love, even before Hogan was there, when it was Backlund. And one of my earlier MSG memories was Backlund in the return match. I want to say it was a lumberjack match with a special guest referee to boot. The guest referee was Swede Hansen, and Backlund was defending against superstar Billy Graham, who at this point was in his karate gear. And Swede was basically a heel going into that match, so we all thought Backlund was getting screwed. But then he called it down the middle, and Hogan got the chicken wing on, and Swede called for the bell, and next thing you know, him and Superstar are going to town. That was pretty well done. And that turned Swede into a baby face for the end of his career. Eddie Gilbert, again, going back to the Garden, going back to the Hogan days and all that. Eddie Gilbert started out in his rookie year along with another rookie year in Kurt Hennig. And they put them together as a tag team in the WWF back in like 82, 83. And they were fun to watch. They never won much. And they kept putting them up against the Samoans, so you knew that Off and Seeker weren't going to lose. But they gave you some moments, and they both came off the top rope with a drop kick, which at that time nobody did that. So that was exciting because the drop kick was already considered a pretty lethal move if you did it to somebody, and they're doing it off the damn top rope. Yeah, Primetime, you bring up a good point here. Hold on a second. I thought I had something here. If I can find where I get all my stuff at. That's what I'm looking for. When you're talking about memories, this will forever be probably one of the biggest when it comes to wrestling for me.
That takes the effect away from the hole. Hulk Hogan now stands up with a Sheik and rams it into the top turnbuckle.
The fans are going wild, and I'm so excited. I don't even want to talk. I want to watch the match.
Sheik going up. Hulk Hogan, he drops a big leg on him. He's down for the cover. Hook the leg. 1, 2. He got him.
Selling his ass off. Nobody had ever escaped the camel clutch.
We have a new champion as Hulk Hogan rolling the boom on the Iron Sheik. History made.
I mean, the Garden is just exploding.
Hulkamania is here.
Ladies and gentlemen, the time of the fall, 5 minutes, 40 seconds. The winner of this bout, and new World Wrestling Federation Heavyweight Champion, the Incredible Hulk Hogan.
Madison Square Garden as one
Wow.
as Hulkamania has taken over.
And that one moment in that clip would be the intro to their Saturday morning program for quite some time. Yeah, that one right there, though, was because we had heard it wasn't, for whatever reason, it wasn't shown on MSG Network Live, that one, when it happened in January of 84 or 85. 84, I think. Yeah, it'd have to be because WrestleMania wasn't for another year. I wonder how far in advance of WrestleMania Vince decided he was going to do WrestleMania. I mean, I don't think it was at the moment, like, bring you in, you're going to beat the Sheik, and then a year later we're going to do this. I don't think it was a year out, but I'd be curious to know when he decided he was going to run the risk of everything he owns. Tom, that's another good point, man. Hogan was one of the first good guys, baby faces, that would turn around and use heel tactics, which, again, he was a heel at one point in time. So you could see where he would be able to do that. Jamie's watching Hogan and Andre, and that's what got him going. Again, that's the thing. I mean, with Hogan, there's so many different aspects of his career, key matchups. You know, the early on leading into Mania was him and Piper. That was it. And then after the Piper thing, which lasted a little while, man, they got some mileage out of that. Then it slowly drifted into, a couple of other guys where you had Big John Studd and worked his way into Andre the Giant, of course. Had the Saturday night steel cage match with Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, who to the last day of his life said that Hulk Hogan made him the most money he's ever made in his life. And that was one of the things Flair kept saying in this TMZ interview, is a lot of people made a lot of money because of Hulk Hogan. Yeah, Dusty was always an interesting one because, again, we'd read about him in magazines but didn't have the chance to see him. And then he'd show up at a Madison Square Garden show, but just once, and that was it. He was gone. He was not usually on Saturday morning TV too much, if ever. So it was a special treat just to see him in a match. I remember one time Mike Graham came to the Garden just because he wanted to wrestle at Madison Square Garden, and he wrestled an undercard match. My buddy... we're watching it at his house at this time. And, we're all like 14, 15 years old. And he had vacationed in Florida. So he'd seen Mike Graham on Championship Wrestling from Florida. And he was telling me about him. He's like, no, this guy's good. I was watching him in Florida. This guy's good. And, yeah, it was a good match. He beat somebody that I can't even tell you who it was. Maybe Rene Goulet kind of person. Again, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that he was the greatest thing on earth or that he lived a perfect life. Nobody does. But we lost an icon. Not just a wrestling icon, but he really was Americana, just like Rambo. He was as much a part of American ideology or imagery as Rambo ever was. It was kind of appropriate that Stallone was the one inducting him into the Hall of Fame. Mayo, I loved the big green belt. I absolutely loved that belt. It was massive, the way a championship should be. And it had the side plates with at that time, all of the champions' names on it, which I don't even know that you could do that today. It would look like the damn Stanley Cup. Danelle, I agree with you, man. Thank you, Hulk Hogan, for all the great memories, moments, Always being the greatest of all time. Thank you. Never be forgotten. Well said. Fans were always on their feet at the Garden when he came out that curtain. It was just something. There was something about being around in the 80s. And I feel for anyone that, if you were born too late to be there, sorry. Nothing like it's ever been since, and I've been there for the Austins and stuff like that, and again, that was pretty close. I mean, when Austin's music hit and that glass broke, you got a pop and a loud one at that. It just wasn't the same. When they used to say all the time, Gorilla famously, the electricity's so thick in here you could cut it with a knife. You literally felt that. You felt the tension was palpable. Like you could touch it, grab it, mold it. It just felt that way in the building. Part of it is because kayfabe was still alive. Survivor Series with Hogan, yeah, and he lost, which never happened back then. His team didn't come out victorious. Wow, Mayo, the fact that you grew up on that era and you stuck with it, kudos, buddy. Because that'd be a good enough reason not to. Iron Sheik legit was one of the most underrated talents. I mean, he sold like a motherfucker. Masked Superstar versus Hogan, I do recall. And again, we talked about Eddie Gilbert in his rookie days. Eddie Gilbert, of course, at that time got involved in a really serious car accident. Almost cost him his career. And he had come back after many months away, and they even played that into his storyline in wrestling, that he had a bad car accident, has a neck injury, and the Masked Superstar at the time, his finisher was the swinging neck breaker, kind of similar to the shake, rattle, and roll without the shake and rattle part. And Superstar took him out to the floor and did it to him one or two times, and then Bob Backlund came out to put an end to that because Superstar and Backlund had a Madison Square Garden showdown coming up. When I think about Hogan, that time frame, another match that comes to mind that made all the Coliseum videos was the Minneapolis Massacre between him and Dr. D. David Schultz, which was a really good old-fashioned bloodbath. And because it was a house show, essentially, the lighting was just gritty as hell, and I loved it. It looked mean and dirty and just everything you would expect with Dr. D. David Schultz. Danelle's another one that got into it with Hogan and Andre. That was a big one, too. I mean, that was up there, I would have to say, with the first WrestleMania, where people that maybe hadn't been paying, or maybe they only paid attention to the first WrestleMania and then kind of backed away, and this brought them back in, was Andre and Hogan, because Andre was listed as undefeated and had never been slammed, even though there's a whole collage out there of him being slammed by 7 or 8 people, including the Ugandan giant Kamala. I think I put that video on X if you've never seen it. It's got all like Stan Hansen slamming him, and I think they're chronological too. There was a Japanese dude, I'm not sure which one it was. But yeah, about 7 people all slamming Andre the Giant. They even kind of cheated and showed Big John Studd and Ken Patera doing a double team slam, which I'm like, well, that's 2 people slamming him, so that doesn't really count. Yeah, Hogan and Piper, you can't go wrong with that. That feud was just so... I mean, Piper was gold, too. I mean, what Piper did with Snuka was selling out arenas. Then you put Piper right after that with... He's already white hot. And you put him with Hogan. It was just... You could not lose. You could not lose. And Hogan was great for kids back then. I mean, saying your prayers, doing your exercises, taking your vitamins, all that good stuff. Coming out with the American flag, and he was just nothing will be the same. That's kind of where I feel. Hogan against Wonderful, that was another great one. Still remember when Wonderful turned on him on TV Saturday morning. You knew because they actually had them in a big match. It was him and Wonderful going up against Bundy and Studd, I think. And that would never happen on Saturday TV. Not Saturday morning. Saturday night main event maybe, but this was Saturday morning TV. The MSG Desert Storm match with Sergeant Slaughter, Hogan, and with the mask. Oh, my God, that mask. Ugh. That mask was stupid. Almost as bad as the helmet with the fist on it. Those are things I bet he wish he could have took back. When you talk about MSG, though, and you're calling this one Desert Storm, but the other one prior to that, of course, the boot camp match with Slaughter and the Sheik. Another one that was just incredible. I was never a Zeus fan. No, I was a Hulkamaniac, man. And Zeus couldn't do shit. With all due respect to Tiny Lister, I mean, he went out there and he learned as much as he could learn in a short period of time and did as little as he could get away with. So they use him as smart as you can possibly use him. And I would still rather him be one of my celebrities in 2K25 over a Prime bottle. Yeah, when Hogan and Andre went head-to-head, I was already here in Florida, so I didn't have my school chums to talk to as much anymore. And I ended up going to the pay-per-view here, the closed circuit. They were still doing closed circuits back then. And I went by myself because I didn't have any wrestling fans at the time. And I was like, I don't give a shit, man. This is how I... And I think you could have probably got the pay-per-view. That might have been one of the first pay-per-views that was an option. But I'm like, no, man, you got to see this in an auditorium. That's how it's supposed to be. And I thought it was going to be like that every year. And every year, that's how I was going to watch it. Hogan and Bundy was another good one. Hogan Savage Mega Powers Explode, WrestleMania 5, if I'm not mistaken. The Ultimate Male versus the Ultimate Meatball Brother. That was such a good movie. That's my guilty pleasure right there. Rocky 3 is my favorite of the Rocky movies. Not because it was a great movie, because it had so much 80s iconage in it. Between Mr. T, Eye of the Tiger, Hulk Hogan. It was just littered with everything that was great about the 80s. Yeah, it's hard not to have a Hulk Hogan figure somewhere or another. I mean, geez, they're everywhere. Every company in the world made them. Hogan, Warrior, Santana. Yeah, I was happy to see Santana got to be on a winning team. He seemed to always end up on the losing end of the pay-per-views, other than the first WrestleMania that he opened the show with. You know what? We talk about cheering for heroes. Back then, there was a pretty decent chunk of the audience that cheered for Roddy Piper. And me and my buddies like, what are you, out of your minds? And they were just ahead of the curve because later on we would start cheering for like Stone Cold Steve Austin. The world was changing back then. Executive decisions to get rid of the Giant Gonzalez. Hey, again, the man tried. With what he could do, he did as much as he could do. I agree with you, Jamie. Always an icon. Hogan and Jesse, it's kind of not that easy to find their matches because they didn't get to really get it. They were just starting their program when Jesse had his health issues and had to stop. He's talked about it in the past about how much money he lost. Tom's mom was a big Hogan fan. A lot of people were. And that was another thing that was very unique about him. Like when he won the title there in the Garden and you saw that one lady losing her mind at the end and all that. And clearly somebody's probably mom or aunt. And he just reached across so many barriers. And for the people that want to, cite one moment in time and say he's a racist, well, here's the thing. It's hard to tell me that the guy's a racist because he dropped a word that back then we all dropped that word. And we dropped a lot of other words too. I was an Italian in New York. I was a Dago. I was a Wop. I was a Guinea. Didn't mean shit. That's just the way everybody spoke. But when Kamala wasn't getting paid out properly for his matches with Hogan, Hogan went to Vince and said, pay him. And he did. A racist would not do that. Hogan and Slaughter, man, Donnell, I feel like that never. I feel like it's when you have a bottle of soda that you've already opened it and then you left it in the fridge for a few days and then you go to open again. The fizz just isn't quite there. And clearly that was the case because they had to move from the LA Coliseum to a 10,000 seat arena. Because they couldn't sell the tickets. Yeah, prime time. It's one of these things where it hasn't officially. It's kind of hit. What day are we on today? Thursday? So tomorrow, SmackDown, they're going to do something. That might be, where it kind of hits a little bit more. Merchandise, man. Jay, you hit it right there. Merchandise. And he might have been one of the first because you got to remember back in the early 80s, they weren't really selling T-shirts. You were hard pressed to find not even a WWF T-shirt. They would sell 8x10s and things like that. And they hadn't even started trading cards yet. So he was probably the first real merch guy. He had the Hulk Hogan workout set. He had the Hulk Hogan energy drinks where you take the powder and mix it with your milk and blah, blah, blah. Now, DiBiase's got a lot going on right now with his legal issues. And not too many people are going to want to necessarily attach their cart to his name while that's going on because he might, I mean, I haven't heard lately about where that's at, but he was in some serious shit. Donnell's another one who loved Rocky 3. It's hard not to, man. It's just it's every guilty pleasure you could ever want rolled into an hour-and-a-half movie. Yeah, I think Primetime, the video game you're talking about, was the very first for the original Nintendo system, perhaps. Yeah, it was the cart, which means I probably have it right over here somewhere. And it was goofy as shit, man. They were just little sprites that would hop and down and kind of looked like they're wrestlers a little bit. But that's all we had back then, so we took it. Same here, Jamie. we all had at that time, the WrestleMania poster was a big item back then, and we had that with him and Hogan and T on it, and had that up on the wall. I wanted to get one recently to figure somebody's making these posters still somewhere, and I did my searching, and they are making them, but my goodness, what they trying to charge for this poster? I'm like, no, I don't, and it's not like it's autographed or anything. I mean, just a freaking poster of him and T, the whole WrestleMania thing, and man, you ain't gonna find one for like $15. At least I couldn't. And doubt you'll find one today. Oh, man. I swear to God, I was thinking like in 2 weeks, I'm going to go on a Monday night and I'm going to go see the karaoke thing that he does out at his bar. And he's almost always there on the Monday nights was the deal. And then you don't know who else is going to show up. And I was kind of looking forward to that. I might still do it anyway now just because, but I don't know. It just kind of a kick in the dick. Hogan and Earthquake. Yeah, I remember the Brother Love segment where they squashed him. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that was also where the Big Boss Man handcuffed him to a guardrail or something while he was being squashed. Maybe I'm blurring two of them together. Yeah, Tom, I was watching that with TMZ. Look, Flair's always been an emotional guy. You know, he'll cry reading a Hallmark card, but obviously this is a little bit different, and you could tell it hit home. Tom, I'm with you there. Let he who was without sin cast the first stone. And again, the man's actions prove that he's not what people would say he is. That's the same reason I get mad when they make these chants of Tessa Blanchard calling her a racist. Man, you're just lying if you're going to tell me and say you've never used a derogatory term to describe somebody based on their ethnicity. You're lying. And for everyone that sits there and calls her a racist and chants that horrible thing at her in the ring, I wish every one of them would have their worst moment captured on video and put on the Jumbotron. Learn a little bit of humility. Yeah, I had heard something about the Coco story. I don't know any of the details about it, Willie D. But, and thanks for being here, buddy. Some names I haven't seen in a while. So appreciate you guys all turning out for this. Yeah, I'd heard a little bit about that, though. Yeah, I can see Atlas and Hogan being tight. Because, yeah, remember when Atlas was coming up, still wasn't, you know, they would wrestle in some cities and some states where Atlas might not, you know, granted, you look at the guy and think, yeah, I ain't going to pick a fight with him. But, you know, three rednecks might. And I can see Hogan standing by him. And he's always been known for that. That's the thing. People want to take a look at a moment in time in a video that never should have even been recorded, much less released, that he wasn't even aware was being recorded. So he's in the privacy of his own home. You can't say something in the privacy of your own home. That's sad. Or, all right, it wasn't his home. It was Bubba's home. What's the difference? You're supposed to be in a private moment. No one's telling you you're being videotaped. That's bullshit. And I tell you right now, the thought that Bubba's on the air or doing whatever bullshit he's doing, acting like he's lost his best friend in the world, go jump off a bridge, you fat fuck. Yeah, they did it. Tom on Coliseum Video had that. I forget, it was greatest moments or maybe Hulkamania's greatest hits or something like that. Let me turn this off because I can tell it's going to go off like 17 times now. Somehow the challenge came up. It was Fuji and Georgie Animal Steel, I believe. And I forget what city they were wrestling in. It might have been Minnesota. And it was during the promo interview that, Gene would always have there. And Hulk Hogan was looking for a tag team partner. He's like, I could beat them with anyone. I could beat them with you, Mean Gene. You be in my corner. And somehow that ended up, Fuji, oh, okay, yeah. And next thing you know, Gene Okerlund was going to be Hulk Hogan's tag team partner. And they go through this whole vignette on training, getting ready for it. And to be honest, if you remember a couple of years ago here on the channel when I was doing the Ultra Pro storyline and my character ends up actually wrestling against whatever his name was now, I can't think of it, Dewey, going up against Dewey, and I had Jesse training me. That whole little montage I did of me training and all that was based on the Hogan Mean Gene thing. That's what made me think of doing it. Again, keeping tradition alive. That's what we're all about. Never cared for Hogan against Tugboat or Earthquake or Typhoon, I should say. He was Typhoon. Well, we just did the Mount Rushmore recently of wrestling, but if I was just to stick to the 80s, well, Hogan goes without saying. 80s, you got to have Hogan, you got to have Flair. I thought I just turned this son of a bitch off. What's going on here? Shut up. You got to have Hogan, you got to have Flair. 80s, Macho Man, and Piper. That's my 80s Mount Rushmore. Good Lord, Hogan and TNA, that was a disaster. From the get-go, primetime, that just fell flat. First off, Hogan was way past his ability to wrestle. And so was Ric Flair, and they decided to main event the first live Monday night head-to-head with the WWE as if that had a chance in hell. And they looked old and worn out and tired, and it was horrible. Hulk Hogan was a WWF product, period. The only reason he got over in WCW is he became a WCW product with the NWO. When he stayed red and gold, yeah, for the initial impact, it was there, and he still kind of popped a crowd. But that got old fast. And I was there for the TV tapings in Orlando. And I'm telling you, we were amongst the ones starting it. It's like heckling him and catcalling him and just saying, the world has changed. And he had literally, Randy Savage was wrestling the main event on a Saturday morning program, right? So it was like him against Arn Anderson, let's say. It was a couple of good names. And Hogan was ringside to cheer Randy on. And because we were becoming so vocal, he had to move to the other side of the ring. And then shortly after that, the NWO. So I would like to take credit for Hulk Hogan becoming Hollywood Hogan and the NWO. You're welcome. Yeah, the Brother Love show was always interesting and entertaining for sure. And that character itself was just ridiculously over. Did Hogan ever go up against Jake Roberts? Yes. And if you blinked, you missed it. Jake Roberts has famously come out and basically thanked all of us for costing him money. He and Hogan get out there and start doing a match. And at this time, Jake's got the DDT. It's the hottest finisher in wrestling. And the fans are all cheering for Jake. And Vince pulled the plug immediately. He said, nope. Not happening. He wasn't going to have the golden goose all of a sudden getting squashed and turned into a lame duck, so to speak. And so, yeah, because Jake was so over with his character and his finisher, he lost out on the Hogan money. He's like, you sons of bitches cost me a bunch of money, man. I don't know, Donnell, that he and T were friends. I think during the time that they were probably, and yeah, I remember Hogan was kind of breaking into Hollywood a little bit at that time too, so wouldn't hurt to have a name like that in your back pocket that you could reach out to. I mean, were Mr. T and Hogan talking over the last 3 or 4 years? I don't know. I would be a little more surprised to find out that they were than that they weren't. Yeah, like Scott says, there are short clips, and you might find one here and one there, but it was an experiment that they did mostly at house shows, and Jake just kept getting over, and it's like, nah, sorry, man. Yeah, Hogan would show up for the Mean Gene thing at 5 in the morning. Of course, that's kayfabe shit. Because there's no way you're getting Gene Okerlund out of bed at 5 a.m. to train him. So there's Hogan doing the raw eggs, and there's Gene Okerlund sitting down with his cup of coffee and a cigar. What are you doing, man? What's with a cigar? Hulk, just having my morning coffee. Yeah, it's not going to work, brother. Yeah, Hogan's only appearance in the XWF, and it was as a favor, was against Perfect, one match, and maybe 1 or 2 little promo spots, but that was it. In my world, I made him the owner. Yeah, the NWO, again, me and the buddy of mine that were 8 months earlier at the TV tapings telling him, you suck, Killbag, yeah, we're tired of your shit. And we were like biggest marks ever, man. When they did 4 straight weeks of WCW Nitro outside of Hollywood Studios and Disney World, which was at that time MGM Studios. So they'd set up their stage and everything just outside the main turnstiles. And they did 4 straight weeks of WCW there. And again, it's TV taping, so it was free. We went every friggin' week for that. And that was right when the NWO thing had just launched. So all of that stuff where like Rey Mysterio got thrown into the side of a trailer, and there was one moment where it looked like the Big Boss Man was going to join the team, and then at the last second, Hogan made this motion where he was like a hitman, or like he was the Don calling for the hitman, like, take him out, bro. And they just beat the shit out of the Boss Man, and we're like, this is cool as fuck, man. And at that time, they didn't even have like the cool logos going on the shirts or anything. They were just wearing a lot of black. He might have had the Hollywood thing on his bandana or something. I'm not sure about that, but it was, again, you find those Monday Nitros where it's 4 weeks in a row, those are the ones we were at. Yeah, that's another. He had 2 famous quotes. One was, what you gonna do? And the other one is, that's not gonna work for me, brother. I might have to put that on a shirt. How did that never get on his shirt? Yeah, Mayo, Jake Roberts was just the most likable bad guy in the world. I don't think he ever had a chance in hell of being a bad guy for long. The Vault just put, by the way, I was talking to Jay Rocks about this. The WWE Vault is like the best YouTube channel out there. Free shit. And it is just gold. And they just put up the Hulk Hogan collector series, and I've got all that stuff on DVDs too. Like Hogan's greatest hits, Hogan's this, Hogan's that. I mean, every time they put out a new collection, even though most of it was the same matches, I kept buying it anyway. But I will probably pop that on here in a little while. Again, I was planning on uploading the video today, and I'm just going to hold off now. Yeah, come on, brother, get your head right. Yeah, that was it was so stupid, and it was so funny. And the way Gene ends up screwing up during the match where they're high-fiving each other, and the referee says, that's a tag, you got to come in. Yeah, Mayo, the Undertaker story, I don't know if I find that funny at all. I think that's kind of cheesy as shit. I remember watching Tuesday in Texas live on pay-per-view, and here comes Ric Flair down the ringside when Hogan and Taker having their moment, and Taker goes for the tombstone, and Flair slides a chair in and then pulls it out. And I remember watching it, and I'm saying, man, he missed that chair by 3 inches. I mean, it's like, it was so not believable that he took that move. And then years later to hear the stories that Hogan was like, oh, you got me, brother. Oh, call my wife. And to make this guy who's young in his career think that he just killed the golden goose, man, that's not right. And then Taker comes up to him, man, I watched the videotape back, and you never touched. No, what happened, man, is you held me so tight that it didn't give me anywhere to move, and it jarred. Oh, come on with the bullshit already. So that wasn't cool. But again, we've all done stuff. I don't know that I've ever heard a Jerry story. And again, talk about Jerry the King Lawler still alive. Literally died on TV. Oh, what, 15, 20 years ago. Still alive. Damn. Just, it's weird. I'm not wishing anything on Jerry, not wishing anything on Flair. Just, sometimes things just don't seem to make sense. When Hogan, see, this was the beginning of the end, though. This is where we were starting to heckle him. When Hogan and the Dungeon of Doom thing was happening, it's like, I'm just bringing back every WWF guy I've ever battled against. We've already been there, done that, seen it. And by the way, you're all getting old. Fraggle Rock, great reference. Hey, anytime you can get a Fraggle Rock reference in there, I know you're in the right channel. Jake was very well paid. And honestly, did he need a title run? No, but wouldn't it have been nice for him to, even if it was the Intercontinental, I guess. I thought he was going to beat Honky Tonk for that at WrestleMania and didn't. But I do feel like it would have been nice for him to have had a championship. Which is why I did it in the XWF a few years ago. I gave it to him. Scott, man, the Fox News thing talking about Hogan's passing today mentioned his RNC appearance, and that he stole the weekend, that he was the highlight of the entire RNC. And I got to agree, man. It was really almost like a time machine. That promo that he cut at the Republican National Conference, it was so on. Hogan the Giant, that was a stinker for me. Going off the top of the building, I thought that was just over the top stupid. Yeah, Jake turning on the Warrior, locked him in the closet there, or whatever that. Oh, the pit of snakes is what it was. to get to that later. My overall Mount Rushmore, we actually just did that on Wrestle Chat like 3 episodes ago. So just refer back to that, and you'll see how we came to the decision, because it was done mathematically. We rated everybody in different categories. So you might want to check that out. Well, Mayo, here's the thing. The reason the title runs were long, I mean, you remember Bruno went 8 years, and then it went to Backlund, and he had it for 6 years. And then it went to Hogan, and he had it for over 3.5 years. I mean, granted, you had the Sheik in between for a couple of months, and you had Superstar Billy Graham in between, and Graham held it for almost a year. But that's because the belts meant something. You were supposed to hold it for a lengthy period of time because you're supposed to be this superhuman force, unless you were the way station, unless you were the one that was just there to hand it off to the next person. Yeah, as much as I love the feud with the Genius, I don't know that I'd call that my favorite Hulk Hogan. Yeah, for me, I would have to say Hogan against Piper. It's probably my favorite Hogan feud. I think it was the most real out of all of them. And I think they brought the best out of each other, the best in that one. But it would be close with that and Andre. Now, if we're talking about one-off matches, I might lean a little bit more towards him and The Rock at WrestleMania. The Hogan-McMahon match at WrestleMania 19 was as good as it could be. You've got Hulk Hogan, who's not a great wrestler. He's a good showman. And what helps him a lot is if you put him in the ring with a Mr. Perfect who can do everything amazingly and make it look like a great wrestling match. You didn't do that. You put him in the ring with Vince McMahon who couldn't do shit. Now, knowing that, they didn't try to have a wrestling match. They had a brawl. And for what it's worth, it worked. I mean, God knows there were worse than that. I was just watching before I heard the news. While I was having my lunch, I was watching the 6 Feet Under broadcast with Shawn Michaels as the guest. If you haven't seen that, it's pretty good. And the subject came up where Taker says, listen, I don't know where your head's at on this, but we need to run it back again. We got to do Saudi. And Shawn just looked at him and said, not a chance in hell. He said, if that is my one blemish on my record, then I am fine with it. And they talk about how, like on paper, how could this match not work? You got Taker and you got, as he kept referring to, the mayor. I called the mayor and everything. You know? So you got Kane and Taker going up against Shawn Michaels and Triple H. Triple H tears his pec. Kane loses the mask. I mean, everything that could happen wrong went wrong. The wheels fell off, and they still tried driving the bus. And I feel like that's kind of reminiscent of Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan. You did as best you could with what you had, but, man, things didn't turn out pretty. I thought Lanny was gay with the Lanny gimmick when he was doing the poetry and stuff long before the Genius thing ever kicked in, when he was a babyface throwing Frisbees out to the fans. I would have bet, and who knows? I mean, it doesn't matter if he is or not. I mean, but I've never heard that he wasn't. I mean, he might have been one of them dabbling people back then, tried a little of this and tried a little of that to see, well, you know, do I like sushi or not? I don't know. Maybe I'm in a hot dog mood. I liked the Mr. America gimmick because it was stupid, and it fit the time because here's Hogan kind of coming back into the more contemporary professional wrestling scene, which at that point in time had evolved. And it's just another layer of Hulk Hogan right there. You know, here he is now as Mr. America, which, by the way, 2K, not too late to probably throw that in there. You can put that mask together for maybe the Saturday night's main event pack. Pay a little tribute that way would be nice. Yeah, King Kong Bundy, that whole thing, especially with originally starting on Saturday Night Live, or main event, excuse me, Saturday night's main event. Hogan went up against Morocco, but then Bundy attacked before he could get the win, and then Morocco, I still remember him holding Hogan in the turnbuckle so that Bundy could come across and just squash the shit out of him like 2 or 3 times. Then he had him laid out on the canvas and held Hogan out again, and Bundy squashed him another 2 or 3 times. Not only did Mr. America give him a little bit more feud with McMahon, it gave them the out to get rid of him with no notice. When things didn't go right and there was a little issue going on between McMahon and Hogan, they had the video of Hogan pulling the mask up at a house show or something like that. Oh, no, it wasn't the house show. It was SmackDown was at Madison Square Garden. And then after the show went off the air, he did the reveal, but the cameras were still rolling, so they saved the footage, and then they showed that as the reason. Because it is Hulk Hogan, he is now suspended for life. And there you go. Wonder how they would have wrote him off if it weren't for that character. Scott, it's hard to find mat-level matches anymore. It's now everybody's doing circus stunts. So, all right. Well, listen, it's a rough day. And like I said, I don't know that I've even let half of it in at this moment. It's just, someone is bad, even if you never met them, or in my case, I got to pat him on the back once, and I got to see him a couple of times in person, and he came to my place of business a couple of years ago, so I got to be within 10 feet of him there and say hi to him. It just sucks because I got time off coming up, and I'm still going to go out to the store. But I was going to, start checking and saying, okay, how many appearances does he do? Does he come to the store often? And then I was going to go do the Monday night thing over in Clearwater. That was my vacation plans. So, kind of sucks. Anyway, thoughts, prayers with him and the family. And again, I do hope he and Brooke didn't go out on a bad note. And I swear to God, if Linda says shit, it's like, don't say anything. Don't try to act like you're sad about it. Say nothing at all. For your kids' sake, say nothing at all. All right, guys, that's going to wrap us up. I'll probably post that video tomorrow instead. I'm just not feeling it today. And that'll put me behind schedule, but that's all right. Remember tomorrow's promise to no one. I've told people this a lot. It says, every day I go to bed thinking this might be the last time. Every day I wake up, I think this may be the last time. There are those that say that's a pretty weird state of mind to be in, and I say no, because it makes you understand that today is all we have. We don't know we have tomorrow. I encourage everybody to keep that somewhere in the back of your mind. Tomorrow is not promised to anyone. Make the most you can out of today. I'll see you guys again next time, hopefully with a much better upbeat topic here on Wrestle Chat. So long.